It wasn't pleasant, I'll tell you that much, Hall told the news station. According to the sheriff's report, the nude individual was John Lyles, 38. Officers responding to Hall's 911 call found the man lying balls up in the victim's robe, exposing his genitalia. A deputy asked Lyles if he knew where he was, and the suspect stated that he did not. We would later find out from John that he had been walking through the woods and brush completely naked. The South Carolina and was taken to the local hospital for evaluation. After his medical release, Lyles was handcuffed and taken to Naples Jail Center for processing. During the ride, the affidavit states that he attempted to tear the patrol car apart and was experiencing periodic bursts of manic rage. Hall reported a PlayStation 4 was missing and later recovered outside the home's window. He was later released on $2,000 bond. So the guy broke in, took the PlayStation 4, smashed it on the ground, went back in, laid on the bed naked. What the fuck?
No, you're missing the whole story. The guy went in, he played the PlayStation 4, and as I've told my children for years, that shit will rot your brains. And he probably spent no more than 30 minutes on that thing and lost his mind and went literally shithouse crazy.
Yep.
That's how I read that story.
He totally raged out. Matt just completely rage quit, threw the PlayStation out the window. Honestly, I
needed a naked nap, man.
Yeah, that needed to be balls out. The funniest thing I find out of that is of all the things, the guy's like, hey, my PlayStation missing. Like, he's not worried about some guy breaking into his house. He doesn't worry that there's this naked dude like fully exposed on his bed. Like, first of all, the guy got into his robe. The second thing, he's got into his bed. Like, I'd be burning my bed.
Right.
Hey, listen, man. Trust me. Do this sometime for just to experiment, just to prove a point. Break into a crack addict's house, take his crack. He won't notice if you're naked either. He's going to be like, where's my crack?
Like, where's my PlayStation?
Needed a fix. His PlayStation was gone. He lost it. He called the cops.
Oh, man. If anything, I think it'd be funner to break into someone's house and leave a PlayStation. They'd be like, what the hell?
Whoa, that's genius.
Yep. Oh, man, that is funny. So the next is actually, speaking of genitalia, this is fantastic. A good segue into my article. Wow, we lined this up really well, actually, for someone who we don't even look at each other's articles. This is good.
Yeah, this is great.
So the title on this one is Man with the World's Largest Penis Exposed as a Fake by Doctor Who Says It's Just 6 inches long.
Who saw that coming?
Yeah, right. So Roberto Esquivel of Saltillo, Mexico, had gained worldwide attention on his appendage after claiming that it was 18.9 inches long, making it the world's largest penis. But the radiologist, Dr. Jesus Pablo Gilmuro, who examined Robert, threw the world record claims into doubt when he said the man had refused to take off all the bandages that would not let him see the skin. Dr. Miro said, when he came here to do a CAT scan, my first impression was that it was a unique and unusual case. I'd never seen a patient like Roberto. He said that he had, or an 18.9 inch dong, maybe.
Except for horses and small wildlife.
Right. He had said he'd become suspicious around conducting the CT scan, saying, well, what would the scan show? And he said, well, the first thing that he had noticed is that there was very large foreskin. It goes just before the knee. But the penis itself, about 16 to 18 centimeters from the pubis, he had said that it doesn't actually go all the way through the foreskin. The rest of the tissue found around it was just foreskin, blood vessels, and some inflammation of the skin. So this man basically had a 6-inch penis with 12.9 inches of foreskin.
This article is so in depth.
So apparently they had talked to Roberto's psychiatrist to reveal that he began enlarging his penis when he was a teenager, and that he was obsessed with penis length. he understood that the 54-year-old had been stretching it using weights since he was a teenager. The claim had sent quivers through the world record community, particularly after the man with the second largest penis in the world argued that Roberto's dong was not what it was made out to be. Jonah Falcon 47, who claims that he has a 13.5-inch penis, says the fact that Roberto had been using weights proves that his claim is not real.
Just wow.
Well, what kind of guy spends years,
right?
trying to? That's a guy that doesn't really understand what that's supposed to be used for in the first place. I mean,
exactly.
Well, an 18-inch penis is that's like when someone says, "I saw this guy; he could throw a football 180 yards." It's like, great, the field's 100 yards long.
Exactly.
Useless.
Yeah.
What's the point?
Well, and to have like 12 inches of foreskin, like, I mean, you have to realize that if you're just stretching the skin and the penis itself is not getting larger, you got to give up.
By the way, hey, let me tell you something. If you think that a giant schlong is going to impress the ladies, I can assure you 12 inches of foreskin ain't the way to get that done. That's not going to help.
No.
That's nobody. And by the way, the woman who is impressed, run for the hills if you meet her.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, jeez.
She's because trust me, she's an experienced tanner and she wants a wallet. That's what she's looking for.
Well, it's funny, and they say that's wwhy women prefer circumcised men in the first place, because they can't resist half off.
Yeah.
I didn't know where this Thursday afternoon was going to take me, but I got to say, didn't see us going down here at all.
It can go down a very dark, deep hole.
It's like you're
not a
welcome.
complaint; it's just an observation. Yeah, great.
Yep.
Everybody's
Amazing.
verbal masturbation for the day.
Yeah, love it.
All right. Well, no segue at all into this. Steve, let's bring things around to you. So tell us, you've got a book that just came out.
I did. I wrote a book called The Biggest Cocks in Rock and Roll. No, I wrote a book called Hard to Handle the Life and Death of the Black Crowes. Sorry, that was the working title, but I switched it,
okay,
for publication.
Nice, yeah.
Well, actually,
either way, it's still hard to handle.
Sincerity, that's very true. I actually was going to call it Hard to Handle the Official Autopsy Report of the Black Crowes. That's a true story, and the publisher was like, "No, we're not trying to confuse the listener before they've opened the book up." I was like, "Oh, I just thought it was funny."
Totally.
But it came out in September. It's let's see, it's a book. It's about I don't spend a whole lot of time. Like, I was born in 1965 in a bucolic neighborhood. It starts basically with me hopping on a Greyhound bus, moving to Atlanta, and meeting the singer of the Black Crowes, Chris Robinson, that night. And then within a few months, we were in a band together. It just goes right from me moving to Atlanta to start playing music. And, it's a pretty crazy story. Even as it was happening for 27 years, the whole time, I knew it was kind of wild. I moved to Atlanta in February of 87, having never owned a drum kit in my life. And in February of 90, our first album came out. So it was a really fast, things happened really, really quickly. And then they didn't really slow down through the year 2013. And it finally blew up in 2014.
It was still a really good run. I mean, when you think about it now, it's
incredible.
It's very interesting that the way you had led that into it's like, well, I fell out of the womb and I just got on a bus and headed to Atlanta.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, sure, you had some interest in music.
Well, and that's
for sure.
The funny thing is, I think I
read
read somewhere that you actually had started in music since like you were 4 years old.
No, complete false. I don't know where you would have seen that.
Okay.
When I was in the fourth grade, when I was about 9, I got a snare drum, and I for the school band, and I was so disillusioned. I wanted to play a drum kit. I mean, I always wanted to be a drummer. It was the only thing I really remember thinking about doing. Mm-hmm. But I was the 8th kid of 8, and
wow. That's a big
It wasn't
family.
like there was extra money laying around for a drum kit, and I sure as hell wasn't going to get a job and buy my own. I mean, I'm not crazy. So, uh, it was something
Steve,
that in the
beat your
back of my head.
brothers.
I played for, yeah, I played. That's about it. It was like, no, here's a basketball.
Yeah.
There's one ball for all of you. Go to the driveway and kill each other and get out of the
Yeah.
house.
Makes a good
Love
beat. Boom, 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 boom.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
But I mean, my whole world was just playing sports and listening to records. Like that's what I did. I was a sports fan. I played sports. And then if I wasn't involved in that, I was just in the basement listening to records, wishing I could be in a band, but not having any idea how that could even possibly happen. You know what I mean? By the time I moved to Kentucky when I was 10 and I was in a small town, and there's no, if you're a great little league baseball player, then you become a great high school baseball player. Then you can go to, there's a path to continue if you're playing sports that makes sense. And that's the way I looked at the world anyway.
Was baseball your
Being
go-to sport?
No, it wasn't. It was actually basketball and soccer are my two sports.
Nice.
I played them, the two things I played my whole life. But I mean, when I was 12 and I'd meet a new kid at school and go, "Do you like music?" He'd go, "Yeah." And I'd go, "Do you want to start a band?" He'd go, "Huh?" It's like there was no follow up. And then when people would say, "Well, what do you play?" And I would say, "Well, I want to play drums." It's like those conversations don't last very long. So, anyway, long story short, I got to college and started playing occasionally. I met a friend who had a drum kit, and I would go, "Hey," and like I remember saying, like, "Hey, can I try that real quick?" And I, sat down and immediately I knew how to play. I knew I could play. I just always had this sense like I'm supposed to be playing drums. And then by the time I was, the summer I turned 21, I started kind of having anxiety attacks. Like, wait a minute, I'm going to graduate in a year, and then I have to be like a real person. And I never tried to be a drummer. I'm supposed to be in a band. What the hell am I doing? So, an old friend called and said, "Do you want to start a band?" And I said yes. And I moved to Atlanta pretty much on a whim. And his roommate was Chris Robinson. So like as soon as I got there, literally that night, Chris picked me up at the bus station. And then next thing you know, we're in a band together, and then the shit went sideways for a long time.
Wow. And it's really interesting. So when maybe you can clear up a little thing for actually, because Matt and I were talking about this when Black Crowes were initially formed. Now I know you were in on kind of like that ground level of the Black Crowes forming, but there was one drummer before you, was there not?
I think there was three or four. I mean, they were when I joined the band. Rich was still a senior in high school. Like I was 21 and he was 17, our guitar player, and so it was still essentially a high school band. And so, like every high school band, they were called Mr. Crow's Garden, and they had a different rhythm section every few months because they weren't good. They didn't have any idea what they were doing in the way that no one really does when you're a kid.
Yeah,
They had ideas of what they wanted to do, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't like there was people lining up to go, "Oh my God, this band's amazing."
Yeah, they
So
just
they
wanted to jam.
had several, they started off with, I think their cousin was their drummer. And then they had another guy. And then they had a dude who was with them for, I really don't know, maybe a year. But that's a year where you're playing 2 or 3 shows a month at the most, at the absolute most. Um, and then that guy left because he joined there was another local band that got a record deal, and they said, "Hey, do you want to join our band?" So he quit Mr. Gross Garden and joined this band called Driving and Crying, who still exists. They've had a great, tremendous career. A region, really, I mean, they had some big play in the early '90s, but they've maintained a great regional following, and they're a great songwriter, great band, et cetera, et cetera. But so, Mr. Crow's Garden needs a drummer to play, and I was like, yeah, let me try that. I had been playing for all of 3 months and joined them, and we just were right back to ground zero. It's like we did, and the bass player had quit, so it wasn't like this was a bona fide established band, and I was like some lucky guy to get the call. My roommate needed a drummer and said, "Why don't you do it?" And I was like, "Cool, okay." That was kind of it. I mean, I knew they had a great ambition, and we had a copacetic sense of humor. We all shared a kind of a desperation more than a focused ambition. There was just this: we'll do anything to do something great. We don't even know how to do it, but we're going to fucking figure it out. It was like we shared. There was an energy and there was an intent that I couldn't explain it at the time in linear terms, but I felt that